Picking up from my last of discussing polyamory, you don't have to watch that. But basically what I was trying to say in the end when I cut off was, me personally, why polyamory, why polyamory is the only thing that works for me is that I am demisexual, which means that I don't feel comfortable having sex with someone unless I feel really close to them, like extremely, extremely close, emotionally and spiritually and whatnot. And I don't know, it just takes a lot for me to feel comfortable with that. And most of the time, I'm really just not comfortable with that. And, I might still have partners though that, have a regular average appetite for that. But they can't find that with me because I would be uncomfortable giving that on a regular basis, because it's not something I desire. And we could still be like compatible, in every other way and like be chilling. But then there's like that one thing that like just doesn't work out for both of us. For me, it would be hard to find someone who fits like that demisexual thing for me. Most of the time you're finding people who have like an average sexual appetite, and I would still want to be able to date those people, but I can't offer my like sexuality, so I'd want them to fill those gaps, to like go seek out other people, obviously staying STT tested and everything, all of the boundaries like that and communication like that. But I would want them to go and seek out another partner for that, need, because there's nothing wrong with needing that, just like there's nothing wrong with me not wanting that, and like I said, like it'd be hard for me to find just one person who fits that because most people have an average sexual appetite. So I would just really, most of the time, be having that situation because of my demisexuality. Even if like I didn't already like would be having multiple like partners in my life that like, oh, I like you, I respect you, I am compatible with you in this way, and I'm compatible with you this way. Like I was saying in my last video that I didn't really fully get to explain, I feel like another reason that I'm poly is because there's this fear for me surrounding monogamous relationships, where in a monogamous relationship I would have to be somebody's everything. Like it's just one-on-one, I'd have to be their everything, I'd have to fulfill their needs in a romantic and sexual way. And I know that's not necessarily true. You have other relationships outside of your romantic relationship, but it just feels like this kind of pressure is being placed on me in monogamous relationships that I can't fulfill. And it's probably because I am poly, and if you're just monogamous, then it's not gonna bother you. But I just feel like I can't be everything. No one can be everything for someone, but that's what I feel like, is kind of a little bit expected in monogamous relationships, a little bit to a certain degree, or at least I feel the pressure of that, even if it's not completely expected in that way, and it's just why I can't feel comfortable with being in a monogamous relationship. It just doesn't feel right to me. And like I just said, everyone's differently compatible. So that's another reason, is like, and like for me, it's like if I'm compatible with you in this way, let's say just like on our interests, and I'm also compatible with this other person on stuff we like to go out and do socially, and these two different relationships don't necessarily coincide. They don't have anything common or any compatibility. I don't feel like there's any reason to eliminate one relationship so you can have the other have to choose. I feel like as long as everybody's being communicated to and everyone knows about the situation, everybody's fine with the situation that's going on, you can have those two separate relationships. I just feel like there's so much different compatibility in the world, and not just for like one-on-one relationships, but multiple people and with multiple people in a relationship. There can be all kinds of interesting compatibilities, or it just feels like a waste to me to completely eliminate a relationship to choose just one, of out of all different kinds of compatibility that you can have with people. Obviously, being poly doesn't mean just running around and dating everyone you possibly can, because that's not going to be easy. You have to take time and effort out of your day and to have a relationship with someone. And the more, relationships you have in your life, the more time and effort that's going to take. So you can only take as much as like is going to work out and be in balance with the rest of your work life, your spiritual life, your emotional life, because you only have so much time and so much energy in a day, if that makes sense. So it's not like you can just go out and date everyone. For some people, that's what they want. They just want one night stands, like all kinds of poly one night stands, and that's cool too. That's what that runs back to, like, everyone's stuff is different. But I'm just trying to say, like, being poly doesn't just mean like some giant orgy, if that makes sense. Like, it takes genuine work. It's not like you could just go out and date a bunch of people, because each of those relationships would take the same amount of work that just one would. So you can only have a certain amount, and it still be balanced, And I want to preface this by saying there's nothing wrong with monogamy. There's nothing wrong with monogamy or being monogamous, at all. But I feel like, a lot of things that happen in some of monogamous culture, let's just start with the example of the kind of, it's normalized to have like a side hoe, whether it's no matter the gender situation, it's always like to have a side person. It's not always, but it's a kind of common thing. But it's like, in these situations, there's like not really a lot. It's not as common for there to be communication about there being a side person or a person on the side. Having a mistress, is normalized, but it's not normalized to like be communicating about it with your partner and being honest about it, and there's a whole slew of reasons that you should be just honest about it. Like, if you're going out of your way to go find someone else because of like sexual desires, you should just be able to be open with your partner about that and be able to communicate, like, hey, these are things I need, and it's not anything wrong with you, but I need to go outside of this relationship and look for that. Like, there's a whole slew of reasons why being honest is like just good and better, but I don't know. It's just, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that they could be potentially polyamorous, because of the stigma people have around, so the social stigma that surrounds poly relationships. Like, a lot of people don't even know what polyamory is. They just call those types of things three-ways or orgies. Like, there's a lot of lack of knowledge on it, and especially for people who do have that like thing where they kind of cheat on their partners and they desire to have multiple people, but they aren't communicating about it, you know what I mean? Like, they aren't being honest about what they want, and so they're having to sneak behind people's back or lie to people, and that ultimately just gets people hurt, because when somebody finds out, it's like, oh, you have to choose, but it's not about you wanting one person more than the other. It's like, you like people for different reasons, and that's just what I mean. It's like, I feel like a lot of this like energy where people feel like some people just like cheating, You know, some people just like to deceive and lie and make other people feel bad. But there's this energy of, like, you don't have to be cheating. Like, some of y'all, and I'm not saying y'all, but I'm just saying, like, the y'all that is what I'm talking about. Some of y'all don't even have to be cheating. It can just be something you communicate about, and it can be okay. But that's what I mean. Is like, there's this social stigma around having multiple people in your life. Like, there's this kind of thing where, like, people expect you to have the normal relationship and have a normal monogamous relationship, and that also ties in with, like, people being homophobic, transphobic. You know, it ties in with that repression and fear, because there's just this thing about sexuality that kind of, like, there is progressiveness, and people are, like, with pride and stuff, like, there is progressiveness, but there's still a huge social stigma around sexuality, and being truly open and honest with it, instead of it just being a cookie cutter of a certain way of sexuality that's, like, just one way of doing it. Especially religiously, people are like, oh, it's only this one way, you know, it only can be this one way, and that's just the way things are, and anything else is wrong. But I think telling someone that their way of loving is wrong, unless they're being, like, not safe, not sane, and not consensual, unless they're, like, not being those things, like, it's wrong to tell someone that the way that they love is wrong. And I don't know. I'm going off on a spiel here, but I just feel like there's a lot more polyamory in the world, potential polyamory, and it really is polyamory when it comes down to it. It's just unethical polyamory, because there's lies, there's deceit. If you're not communicating openly about it, and you're not being honest with every person involved, every party involved, then yes, it is unethical non-monogamy, and, you know, somebody's gonna get hurt, you know, whether it's you, whether it's somebody you care about. And that's why I feel like it's so important to talk about these things and to normalize these things, to talk about stuff like this, because so much of this just goes in the dark. Communication is just so important, bro. But yeah, touching back on the first video on why it's important to have ethical and open communication in a poly relationship, because that's what sets boundaries for what is ethical non-monogamy and what is not ethical non-monogamy, what's considered cheating or toxic relationships. That open communication and that being honest is what sets the boundary for it being a toxic relationship and it being a healthy relationship, not only with others but with yourself, because you need to have that boundary of, like, you know, yeah. And I just want to go ahead and say here that as I'm sitting here, like, trying to talk about this, trying to normalize this stuff, I want to say, like, it's healthy and it is okay to desire multiple people, like, for different reasons too. To not feel completely satisfied with just one person, that's normal. Or to want to have another person in your life while still having, like, a main person of interest. And these are things that need to be talked about with a partner if that's how you feel. And of course that's not easy, because there's going to be guilt surrounding, like, what your partner wants, what you need, what your partner needs. I've seen a lot of situations, I've heard about a lot of situations where people have been in long marriages, found out they were poly, and had to end the marriage. Because you can be compatible in a lot of different ways, but if one person's monogamous, the other person's poly, like, you are just not compatible. That's just the end of a period. Like, that's just not a compatibility. Everyone's taste is different. Everyone's needs in a romantic relationship, everyone's needs in a sexual relationship is different. And those different aspects of their life, everyone's taste is completely different. And the complete spectrum of sexuality needs to be normalized. Not only, like, being gay, doing all that, blah, 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 who cares about that? Like, there's so much of a spectrum to sexuality that shaming polyamory doesn't really make sense. Like I said earlier, that it's kind of like wrong to shame someone for the way they love if they're being safe, sane, and consensual. Because you don't know what that person needs. You don't know what that other person wants or needs. You can only know what you want or need, and you can only set the boundaries for what you want or need. You can openly communicate and talk with another person about it, but if they're not being truthful about it, there's nothing you can do until you figure that out later on down the line, inevitably. Like, you can only be honest about your stuff with yourself, because if you try to lie or try to fit yourself in a relationship that isn't compatible with your needs, it's gonna cause problems later down the line. And no matter how long that takes, like, it's gonna be evident that, you know, things aren't working out, or the evidentness will be there, and nothing will ever, y'all won't even ever separate. It'll just be kind of a miserable relationship, because neither of y'all are really open to acknowledging, you know, the elephant in the room. And it can be scary to talk about one's partner with something like that. It can be very scary and intimidating, because it's someone you care so much about, someone who's probably a super intrinsic part of your life at this point. But ultimately, it's important, because it's like, it shows that you trust them. It shows that you're willing to be vulnerable. It shows that, like, you'd rather be honest with them now than, like, have shit go down later on down the line and be like, have to tell the truth then anyway, or just deny the truth later on. Like, it shows how much you care about a person when you're willing to be honest with them, even if it, you know, could mean the end of a relationship, or could mean any slew of things. And it's best for that other person to know, or it's gonna, like, come back later down the line. It's also important to normalize sexuality within yourself, and those boundaries within yourself of what you need. If you don't normalize and accept what you need and figure out what it is you need in those aspects of your life, you're gonna get into relationships that you don't actually want. You know, you might get into relationships that just don't work out for you. Or if you're just scared of those parts of yourself and you run away from it, you can't set those boundaries, and you're also gonna have relationships that aren't fulfilling for you. Because when you demonize that stuff within yourself, no matter what, polyamory, sexuality, any of it, and you make yourself feel guilty for the way you love, it makes it harder to find fulfilling relationships, or have the confidence to set the boundaries you need within relationships down the line. Any relationship, familial, friendships, romantic, sexual, any relationships, your needs aren't going to be being met, because you aren't having the confidence to set those boundaries of, like, this is what I want, this is what I need, because you aren't accepting what you want and what you need. You need to, like, it's okay. If you keep thinking of it as, like, it's wrong, you're never going to be able to face it, and it's just going to be a problem later on down the line of, like, you not feeling fulfilled, not feeling satisfied, even if, like, you're able to repress it your whole life, which sounds like it would suck. Another reason I'd say polyamory is very beneficial, I know I said this earlier when I said why I'm poly, is sexuality versus asexuality. Some people are just straight up asexual, but they still have, you know, they might not be aromantic, so they might still feel romantic feelings and want to be in a relationship. Like I said earlier, most people have, you know, an average amount of sexuality, I guess you could say. Most people are not asexual, so it's harder for an asexual person, or a person on the asexual spectrum, to find a partner, a compatible partner, because there's so many people having these sexual needs, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it makes it to where polyamory as a concept is very beneficial for a lot of people, different tastes and different needs in a relationship. Even if you in particular are not poly or something like that, like, this can help you understand of, like, why this would only why this would be the only thing that could work for some people. Like, why straight up monogamy isn't right for everyone. Even though there's nothing wrong with monogamy in and of itself. It's, I would say, non-ethical polyamory is when it gets wrong. Like, if you're having an ethical monogamous relationship, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're being not ethical, when you're lying or not communicating about stuff or withholding stuff, that's when it's unethical, you know? That's when you're being toxic, and you can potentially hurt the other person and definitely hurt yourself by enabling toxic behaviors within yourself. And you know the drill. Why I'm poly? I basically already explained it. Because I'm demi, because I would feel pressure in a monogamous relationship to like live up to the expectation of being someone's everything. It's not like I couldn't just have a one-on-one relationship while I don't have any other compatible partners available. I just mean I wouldn't feel comfortable being just straight up monogamous and not being allowed within the communicated boundaries of that relationship to have other partners. I wouldn't like that. I'd prefer to have a relationship where it's communicated that we both have multiple partners and we communicate about it. Why else I'm poly? I just love people. I love people. I see the art in people. I like just being able to show affection to people I respect and to people I care for. And for me, showing affection is like touch. It's by, attention. It's by listening. It's by just being there. And that's just showing affection for me. And I feel a need and a desire to show affection for everyone that I feel romantically interested in, or not just that I'm interested in them, but I've had some time to like get to know them, and that obviously, because you should always get to know someone first. You don't want to just jump into someone because then they end up being someone you didn't even know who they were. They end up just being like some crazy person. You didn't even know who they were. You gotta get to know someone first, so you know who they are, you know who it is you're giving affection to. But for me, that can happen with multiple people. And I didn't used to think, I mean, I still think it's kind of weird sometimes, but it's normal. I have to just be like, it's normal, it's okay, because it is normal and it is okay, because I have those feelings, and I just sitting there denying the feelings isn't going to make them go away. But communicating about them with everyone involved can help everybody be on the same page. Like, yeah, I'm feeling this. I feel a little guilty because I don't know if y'all are feeling this too. But if we're all feeling this and we're all talking about it together, now we can all feel better about it because we've talked about it. Communication is so great. It can be scary, but it is very great and helpful and very necessary. So that's just how I know I'm poly. That's just my preference and all of that. But relationships aren't just black and white. No relationship is just black and white. It's easy for things to get muddy. It's easy for it to be like, oh, I always had this one person. I've always had this one person. But then maybe you have like a childhood friend who comes back who you used to have like a puppy love with. And, now everything's kind of different because it's not like y'all even have said anything, but there's like a tension between y'all. And, it's easy for stuff to just get muddy like that. Like, it's just all of a sudden, the boundaries are weird surrounding your relationship because there's an unsaid tension. Even if you're not talking about it, there can still be that unsaid tension there of things getting muddy. And that's why it's so important for communication, because in that situation, like, the best you could do is communicate with both people about it. Communicate with your partner, like, hey, I'm feeling this towards the person. Even if you think that they're going to be upset, even if you think that they're going to be jealous, like, it shows that you trust them more when you're able to communicate and be honest about that, instead of lying and then it become like a bigger thing down the line. When something muddy like that does happen, you don't feel like you have to tiptoe around it or lie to others due to not knowing how they'd feel about muddy, unclear, confusing vibes, like them just wanting it to be black and white, and are scared of their reaction. Like, yes, it's normal to be scared of their reaction. It's normal to be concerned about their feelings and having to worry them that there's muddiness in general, and that you can't be, and you can't, even with trying to talk to them about it, you can't be clear of this is black and white, this is the situation, how it's happening. It would be kind of a muddy conversation because it's not easy to talk about, it's not easy to acknowledge when all it is feeling attention, but it's important because that communication, it's what ties people together, it's what strengthens a relationship so much, and it's what shows you have a trust and bond between one another. So I don't know, that's just what I want to discuss today.